Chris Landry, welcome back to Tuscaloosa. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm going to get your thoughts. I know we're a couple of days removed, but you see Alabama selected at that number 4 spot. Do you think the committee got it right?
Yeah, I think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. It wasn't really that complicated in my view. You never know what the committee's going to do, of course. So I guess I wouldn't have been shocked either way. But in terms of who the 4 best teams are, by any measure, I think Alabama's the better team. I think that if you look at the, as people like to say, the resume, 1 loss versus 2 losses compared to Ohio State. Look at Ohio State's losses were, to me, watching them during the course of the year, they're not nearly as good of a team. And while I wouldn't make this the reason why I would make the decision, I also look at things like if I lined up Alabama against Clemson, I could see a really good game. If I lined up Ohio State against Clemson, I don't see a very good game. So I think that by all measures, to me, Alabama's the better team. I still would like to, and I've always been on my mission, and I'll say it again for your audience, and I've always believed that we go about it a little bit wrong in my view. I felt we went down the wrong path years ago. I believe that we should have the season, and we should have, and it's fine to have the conference championship games, but I think it should lead to the bowl matchups. I think we should have the best teams and the best bowl matchups. And then after the bowls, you pick 4 teams or 2 teams, however you want to do it. We used to do it, obviously, with 2 in the BCS era. But I always felt like that using the bowls and putting that in play would do a couple of things. It would make the bowl games relevant because right now we've got kids left and right that are backing out of the bowl games that are not the playoff bowl games. And I think it would create a lot of excitement for the bowl games in December and give college football a December version of what college basketball has in March. And I think it would make it very exciting. And I think it would be a greater indicator of who the 4 best teams are. You never know through the course of the regular season going into it which schedules are going to be as strong or as weak as you think they're going to be, because we don't know how teams are going to play out and develop during the course of the year. But by the end of the season, we know who the best teams are. And I think that putting them in the best bowl matchups, playing the bowl games, and leading up to January 1st to where it always traditionally was, and then picking 4 teams after that. Or if you think that's too many, pick 2 after that. That's, my 2 cents. There's 0 chance of that happening, but that's kind of how I envision it.
And I want to throw something else in this, and I know you vote for some of these awards just like I do here. I'd love to be able to take these Heisman trophies and all these awards that'll be handed out and put that at the back end of the season. You know what I mean? I mean, we've got to vote for these things. Like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were submitting votes for this award and that award. The Heisman Trophy obviously will be this weekend. I'd love to see those big competitors in the big games, in those moments, how they shine.
It certainly would change who would win. I think if you did it that way, Deshaun Watson wins it last year. I think Vince Young probably ekes out Reggie Bush, where it was the opposite. A couple of things. It's a really good point for people who wonder. Maybe younger audiences. Brian, that football's changed so much. When they used to have the Heisman Trophy at the same time, the college football season was over. I mean, it was over, and that's it. You didn't. You ended up having bowl games, but the national championship used to be voted on before the bowl games. It was just strictly exhibition. As times have changed, you'd think that we could do that. The reason why they don't is typical. It's programming. You got Army-Navy. It leads into the Heisman celebration, and it's like they don't want to spend the time after the season to do it. But to truly get the winner of the award, it would make a lot of sense to add through the end of the year and do it maybe in the offseason. I think they feel like it would lose a lot of luster if you had the Heisman celebration, sometimes in January, which is probably true because people are moved on to something else. And I do think it probably gets a lot more play this weekend, but I agree with you. Sometimes you get the person that's had the best regular season, but not the best complete season.
We're talking to Chris Landry right now. We're talking about LandryFootball.com. It's the special report that you hear, whether we're talking about recruiting, draft, coaching searches. Man, That is on fire right now. Lots of free information with their membership packages. LandryFootball.com. If you're thinking about a special Christmas, that college football fan in your life, an extra Christmas gift, the fan that wants to go a little bit deeper, it is LandryFootball.com. Chris, let me ask you, you know Nick Saban. Why is he so effective in the living rooms? And I'm talking about recruiting because he is really beginning to pick up steam as we approach December the 20th.
Yeah, we put out last night a big commitment that they got, and they had a couple here in the last 24 hours. I think the one thing that he does, first of all, it's a chicken-egg thing. He's successful, and because he's successful, his appearance and his words resonate. But he wasn't always successful. He had to be able to sell in the recruiting process before he became successful. And he helped create this success. I think one thing that he does a little differently, he's very direct. He has a plan. He has a vision. He's like in anything else he does, he's very detailed. So he goes in, and he knows as much as he can know about the player and the family, and he sits there and he listens to what their vision is about what they want. And he has a plan in mind. Okay, well, here's kind of where we see you. We see you in this role and that role. Now, this is how we handle things in our program. This is what we expect of you in the classroom. This is what we expect of you in the training room, and it's going to be difficult. You're not guaranteed anything, and if that's not something that you're interested in, then you can't be a fit for us because this is what we are. So he's very direct, and I think that at this stage, what makes him successful is that every one of these kids wants to have a chance to play in the NFL, and it's the best program and the best coach in the country, so it gives them the best chance. He also is really good about putting an emphasis on making sure that their life after football and beyond football is huge. And he's put a lot of emphasis, first of all, at Michigan State and then at LSU and now at Alabama in his college stops, to helping kids have an opportunity to learn, whether they want to get into, I don't know, accounting or, pre-med or what have you, to give themselves the best opportunity to use the resources we have on our campus, connections in that particular industry, to help you get on the right foot. An internship, a scholarship beyond football, all the continuing education, all the things he wants to be able to go to kids and say, here are the people that have come through the program, and here's what they've done that have been successful. Here's how many lawyers, doctors, accountants, what have you. So it's the direct approach, and it's not a quick, everything is going to be great. It's going to be tough, and you're going to be required to go to study hall this many days, this many hours, and if that's not something you feel you can handle, then we'll excuse ourselves right now. But this is what we want. And going in, he goes in knowing that, hey, yeah, this is a kid that's going to be up for that. But he's very upfront, Ryan. He really is.
Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts as Alabama approaches this big game with Clemson, the trilogy, the sort of the obviously a rematch going for the third consecutive year, even though it's semifinal game. What do you see in this Clemson football team?
I see a very athletic, deep, physical defense that can chase, pursue, rush the passer, defend the run, create a lot of problems defensively. Offensively, they do a really good job with their run game. They can mix up tempo a little bit. They're not as good a passing team as they were last year, obviously, due to the lack of Deshaun Watson, but they can be very effective. They play with a lot of confidence. They play with an attitude. They've been here before. I think they've gotten a lot of confidence on how well prepared and how well they played against Alabama the last 2 years. That helps. This is going to be a little bit of a different circumstances for them, however, in that, both of these teams have an inordinate amount of time to prepare. It's a different situation. Saban has more time to try to crack the code and try to break things down, and that's something he's very, very good at. Now, they'll have their football analysts work a little bit on Georgia and a little bit on Oklahoma, because obviously the turnaround is going to be, a little quicker than you have right now to prepare for Clemson. But they'll be fully focused as a staff on Clemson, but they'll have some work being done to prepare. But getting that, if they win this game, but I think the biggest thing is that they're going to have a lot of time to prepare, which is, I think certainly if you give him the time to prepare, it's usually to the advantage of Saban and Alabama. They're going to likely have, I would think, it sounds like, don't know, 7 or 8 of those injured guys back. How effective, how healthy is going to be, critical to their success. So they very well could be the team that most people thought were the best team in the country, including myself, most of the year. So I think it's going to be quite a challenge for Clemson to match up. Yet I think most people kind of look at it as, well, Clemson's number 1 seed and Alabama's 4, and I think Alabama's and Nick Saban's just fine with that.
Do you see an area on this Clemson football team that Alabama can attack?
Yeah, I think you can. If you can get enough time to throw, I think you can throw on them, particularly in the middle of the field. Do you have enough time? That's going to be a challenge. I think you're going to have to roll the pocket some. This is an advantage. Clemson, both defensive fronts have an advantage here. If Alabama's full strength, they've got an advantage over Clemson's offensive line, but definitely Clemson's defensive line has an advantage over Alabama's offensive line. Over just about everybody. They can create pressure, base pressure, that allows them to stay back some in coverage. But if you can do a good job protecting and rolling out the pocket, I think you can make some plays across the short middle and deep middle of the field. I think you can have some success throwing the football on.
Chris, when you look at Alabama, certainly they're the standard that you live up to, but you've also got to step back and look at what Dabo's been able to accomplish at Clemson. I know they're playing for the rights to go to Atlanta, but when we talk about the last 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, maybe they're playing for Clemson to pull up side by side with the Crimson Tide.
Well, there's no doubt about it. You're looking at the premier programs Alabama's had the long stretch, but let's just say if Clemson were to win it, you win it 2 years in a row, then the narrative is going to be, hey, Clemson's best program in the country, and they'd have a right to say that. Can you win the title 2 years in a row? They've been to the national championship game, would be in the national championship game for 3 years in a row. To this point, I think there is something to the effect of, Alabama, Clemson, the winner is going to own the rights of, at least in the short term, who's been the best program. Over a longer stretch, we know that's been Alabama. Clemson's a little bit newer to the party, but they've crashed it, and they've made their statement loud and proud the last couple of years. Last year, in particular, winning it. But this year, if they were to do it, there's no doubt that people will say, "Hey, look, it's pardon the pun, but the tide has turned." And so I think that is absolutely the narrative that's ready to be written if they win it.
Chris, before we move to Jeremy Pruitt, I'm going to throw it to you and let you promote the website. There's some great deals happening right now for a lot of those college football fans that want to go deeper. Invite people to connect with you on the website.
Well, I appreciate it. We started this about 3 years ago, and, my parent company, Landry Football Operations, services college programs and NFL teams, and I was approached about doing something for the fan. What can we do to provide fans a viewpoint from a coaching and scouting perspective? Well, that's what LandryFootball.com is. We have got free information on there. We've got podcasts every Tuesday and Thursday, a lot of free details, but we have a membership package where we, for the serious fan that wants to learn more about the game, learn more about the college game, the pro game from a coaching and scouting perspective, that's what we do for you. So that's what LandryFootball.com was built on, and that's what we do. We've got a special right now, the best special we have. It's a holiday special. And it's one for a year, and it for $49.99 for an entire year, you get the entire remainder of the football season. If you're an NFL fan, college fan, the bowl season, the NFL season, recruiting, free agency, the draft, all off season, where we have notebooks every day of what's going on and a lot of different things related to football, and then all next football season. It's the best offer we have. That's over right at 70% off. So Listen, if you like football and you want to get the better access to the game, not just the normal stuff, that's what LandryFootball.com provides you. You can follow me on Twitter at LandryFootball. We try to keep people updated on all the latest information on the coaching searches and everything else going on. You know, Alabama's a couple of commitments last night. We talked about it. We have a lot of information and interaction that we try to help out with our fans and followers.
Chris, I'd love for you to dive in what you're hearing on Jeremy Pruitt.
Well, I think that, he's a well-thought-of guy, and I think he'd be a really good fit if that's the direction that Tennessee wants to go. I do believe that they've made progress towards that. Jeremy knows how a first-class program should be run. I think he has a vision and idea of how he wants his support staff to look and the resources that it needs to take for that. I think if Tennessee's willing to commit to that, I think he'd be very interested. For all the laughter that has surrounded this offseason the past couple of weeks with Tennessee, it's still a premier program in a premier conference. So I think it is something that if it's structured correctly and presented correctly, which I think that it has been, I think there's a good chance that he'll get offered and he'll take it. Now, I don't know all the parameters and details. I think he's going to want to run his program. He's going to want to hire his coaches, and he's going to want to have the support and commitment. I also think there's a lot of push from inside to make the move. A few years ago, I don't know how well known this is publicly, but there was a lot of push inside to hire Kirby Smart, and they ended up hiring Butch Jones because he was a standing head coach. So very often when you get into these coaching searches, and if you're in a program like Tennessee where you go through multiple coaching searches over a period of time, sometimes you tend to look back on your decisions, positive ones, negative ones, and say, if I could do that over again. And I think in their eyes they're thinking, this might be the next Kirby Smart. We passed on Kirby the last time. We don't want to do it here. Now, I think that Georgia's got their house in order a lot more than Tennessee does, so I'm not saying it would have been the same, but I think that's how they're looking at it. So we shall see. I think if it's not him, that Kevin Steele is in play with his Tennessee background. But I think we're getting to the point where it's probably going to be done by tomorrow. If not, it's going to put the recruiting weekend, a big recruiting that they have in play, in jeopardy, in that it's going to be tough to reschedule the visits of those kids before the early signing period, which, of course, is the 20th and 22nd.
Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts about Jimbo Fisher going to Texas A&M.
Well, I think it's a really good move. I think Jimbo's an outstanding coach. I think he's tough-minded. I think he wants to run a tough physical offense built around the running game. He's good with quarterbacks. He's a great recruiter. He had issues with the administration trying to get them to commit. And they're doing things, but it's been a slow process to get the facilities to look like what a Clemson's look like, for example. And he knows that in order to compete at the highest level, that's what they need. Well, at A&M, you've got right now what I think, and being over there recently, it may be the finest facilities in the country because it's the newest. They've spent $500 million. They've got everything you could possibly want in terms of facilities. Now, does that guarantee you'll win? No, of course not, because if you remember, they were the ones that hired Jackie Sherrill years ago. I don't know if people remember, but they actually hired Bo Schembechler, who from Michigan, who accepted the job, slept on it, and backed out, and then they went, A&M did, and went to Pittsburgh and hired Jackie Sherrill. And they paid him a large sum of money at that time, which is $250,000 a year, which rocked the college football world. So they've always been willing to spend money, but they've not had the success. So their feeling is we're gonna pay everything we need, do everything we need to try to build it and put the right person in play. Is Jimbo the right person? Time will tell. I think he'll do very well. He's in the toughest division of the toughest conference. And if I think there's anybody that could kind of challenge for that, spot with Alabama or behind Alabama, I would probably say right now in the West, that is, I would say it's probably Jimbo Fisher. I think that he's in best position, not in the first couple of years, but I think in time, I think he could. Do I see him overtaking Alabama? I do not, But in terms of that second spot, you see Auburn's inconsistency. I don't see LSU with Ed Orgeron challenging Alabama. I think in maybe 3 years we could see A&M kind of being that second best program in the West. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not.
Hey, Chris, final question. We ask a question a day to our fans, and we were asking, what do you want to see Alabama improve the most? Obviously, health is one of those things, and they'll have some time to get those back. But a lot of it is going back and maybe doing the little things more on offense. You know, you talk about the first part of the season that a lot of fans have brought up. They had a lot of momentum on that offensive side of the football. Towards the back end, they sort of lost a little bit of that momentum. Let me ask you, how do you think Alabama can get back on track offensively?
Well, I'm going to tell you, they lost the line of scrimmage against Auburn, and they lost it to some degree against Mississippi State and LSU. So if there's one thing that I wonder if they can get back is that's what they're going to have to do. If they don't, it's going to be very challenging for this offense. I don't care. You can talk about quarterback and doing this and throwing it and all this kind of stuff. You lose the line of scrimmage, you usually lose the game. And they were able to beat LSU in Mississippi State, and they were not against Auburn, which they were really beaten up at the line of scrimmage. So that's got to change. That's got to improve, and I'm very curious to see what they can do there to maybe loosen it. Now, as an example, Georgia lost the line of scrimmage against Auburn in that first matchup. One of the things that they did schematically differently, and I thought was very effective, one, they worked the screen game very well. They forced, Auburn to run and kind of wear them out. That's what Alabama's going to have to do. They're going to have to get Clemson to do two things. One, they're going to have to force them to chase the ball. I think move the pocket, work the screen game, try to get Clemson's very good defensive front worn out a little bit. And then defensively, get off the field and force that Clemson defense to get back on the field and do it again and again. And over time, that dam will break. And that's what you saw Georgia crack the code against Auburn, mainly because Auburn couldn't run the football and they couldn't sustain things on offense. So Georgia got the ball back and back and back, and that they had success. That's what Alabama's going to have to do. So that's going to be key. And then along with that is how do you sustain a little bit on offense? Well, you're going to have to be able to take advantages of opportunities in the passing game. There's some plays there that can be made, and if that's effective, that's going to help you. So that's what I think needs to be done improvement-wise, and I think there's some things they can do schematically to get done. I remind folks of a few years ago, Alabama and LSU played that famous game in November in Tuscaloosa, 9-6 game. LSU won, and they had the rematch in the championship game, and neither offense was very good. You had a young quarterback for Alabama and a veteran quarterback for LSU that just wasn't very good. And what's going to happen? These two teams are great defense. They can't do anything. And what did Alabama do with all that time? They prepared, and they really attacked with a lot of screens and worked the perimeter of the passing game, and they forced LSU to spread out, and then they eventually ran the football on them and won the game 21-0. So the ability to adjust and prepare with a lot of time is one advantage that I think Alabama has with Nick Saban.
LandryFootball.com is the website. Check out the podcast each Tuesday and each Thursday. You've got How to Make Bowl Games Better. That's a great listen there. It's LandryFootball.com, a lot of free information, and then also a membership-based information as well if you're looking for insight directly from an NFL scout, that someone who has been a coach, from a scout and administrator, those football views from a coach, a scout, and administrator. LandryFootball.com. Hey, Chris, I always enjoy the conversation. Thank you again. I'll talk to you next week.
Hey, look forward to it. Thank you so much.